This is John Sadak, TV voice of the Cincinnati Reds, and you're up for Late Night Reds Talk.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into another edition of Late Night Reds Talk Live, part of the Believe Podcast Network, sponsored as always by our friends at Bet Online. My name is Nick Kirby, and we are so excited to have you with us tonight as we talk about the professional Cincinnati sports team that has not lost a championship since 1972. Let's go. We finished our series last week covering each of the NL Central teams. If you missed any of those, definitely go back and check those out. Tonight, we're all back to Reds Talk. We got an awesome guest with us tonight that I'm really excited I'll introduce here in a minute. But before we do that, Carlos, I was taking a look at Bet Online earlier today, looking at some NL or some NL and AL division odds. Who did you like as a division winner as a good bet right now?
The Phillies, they jumped out at me at plus 450.
Yeah.
I like them. I feel like they might do a little something as soon as they're allowed to, start signing players. I feel like they're going to get another, 2, possibly 3 guys.
Yeah, I like that one. That's a good one. I saw Cleveland at plus 800. That number seems really high in the AL Central, kind of a division, not very much after the White Sox. And they got the pitching that, if the White Sox kind of have a down year or whatever, they might be able to. Well, if you like those bets, head on over to Bet Online. They have got all kinds of cool odds, props, all kinds of fun stuff. And if you go over, you can use their website or their mobile device and sign up today. You can receive a 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code BELIEVE to get started. That is BLEAV, BLEAV to get started. And it's not just baseball. Bet Online is your source for basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage. It's the best in the business, from sports right down to your favorite Vegas casino games. Bet Online is your number one online wagering destination. Bet Online is where the game starts. All right. Well, tonight we are so excited to have with us on the show one of my good friends. I've followed this guy for a long time. One of the most talented writers, I think, to ever write for the Reds. Honestly, every time I read something that he writes, it makes me think, you know what, I just need to stick to podcasting. That's more of my lane. This is Mr. Richard Fitch. Richard, welcome to Late Night Reds Talk.
Thank you so much, Nick. I think that introduction was a little bit hyperbolic, but I'll take the compliment and run with it.
No, absolutely. Seriously. Heartfelt for sure. Richard, you just recently moved back to the area. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's been in the work for a long time. I was getting ready. I've been working in Manhattan, and I was getting ready to. I thought I was going to get ready to retire, but at any rate, I decided that it was time to move back home. I'd left here, gosh, almost 40 years ago, from Northern Kentucky, and went to seek my fortune in New York City. And after about 40 years, it was time to come home. And so I planned that, and I got here in late October, and I'm living here on the Ohio River in Dayton, Kentucky. It's a beautiful thing.
Fantastic. I'll have to come meet you up at a Reds game in Cincinnati for once. I think I've met you in Cleveland and in Pittsburgh for Reds games. So we'll have to do it in the Queen City one of these times. Well, fantastic. Yeah. Thanks for joining us tonight, Richard. Let's jump in. I wanted to talk about your most recent article that you wrote for the digital pages of redlegnation.com. A Cincinnati sports fan reckoning. Tell us a little bit about this article and the inspiration behind it.
Well, a lot of it had to do with me moving back here, and some of it had to do with my son. I didn't make my son a Bengals fan. I left it up to him, and he decided to do that. And he was just happened to be coming down here this weekend to be with me during the Super Bowl. So we did that together. And so I wanted to write a piece about that because I've always been a big football fan. I'm a baseball fan first, but I've always loved pro football, as I wrote. And I have a big connection with my son and football and sports in general. And I wanted to write about my feelings about not only about Cincinnati football, but also about how it connects with the Reds, because we're sort of at an interesting point where Bob Castellini has probably some decisions to make about what direction he's going in. I think a lot of people watching are wondering if he's sort of backing off on his commitment to have a championship team in Cincinnati. On the other hand, Mike Brown has suddenly become the darling of Cincinnati sports, and I'm not sure that's anything to do with Mike Brown. He's been, well, a little bit, but I mean, he's really been lucky. I mean, he's all that losing got him, this great quarterback, and that's helped out a lot. It'll be interesting to see whether Mike Brown spends money in the offseason. They've got about $48 million in cap space, I think. So we'll see. Is he going to fix that offensive line or not? And on the other side, upriver, what's Bob Castellini going to do? He's got a lot of work ahead of him, and it's going to be really interesting. And now that I'm back, I want to go to a lot of games, and I want to support the Reds, but I want the Cincinnati Reds organization to start supporting the fans. And we'll see.
Yeah, it's interesting how perception, really becomes reality with Castellini versus Brown, and it's just we had on last week one of the guys who is in the Milwaukee area that covers the Brewers, and there's no issues with Brewers fans about how much they're spending. And they're spending significantly less than the Reds, and they've spent significantly less than the Reds for years. It's just, when you're winning, no one cares. When you're losing, it becomes magnified.
Yeah,
for sure. I wanted to tell you, I don't know if this is your most famous piece or not of all time, but I definitely think it probably got the most attention. I'll give a long-winded intro to this, so bear with me, just because I want to make sure that people who maybe weren't around in 2013 or weren't following the Reds closely in 2013 kind of understand, where this came from. But you wrote this piece about Joey Votto back in 2013 when the climate around Joey Votto was not anywhere like it is now. There was this very anti-walking, Votto had a weird year where he just didn't drive in a lot of runs. Probably had something to do with like a 260 on base guy in front of him batting. But long story short, you wrote this piece kind of defending our hero's honor, and it really kind of blew up. Joe Posnowski quoted it in an article. It was on ESPN, and you actually went on the MLB Network and talked about it. Tell us about how that article kind of blew up and what that was like for those who may not know the story.
Well, to this day, I'm not sure how it blew up. I mean, it was just one of those moments where someone saw something and said, "Hey, this needs to be illuminated a little bit." I mean, I remember, it's funny. I was riding home on the New Jersey Transit bus, and I was leaving Port Authority and heading home, and I think it was you and maybe Jason Linden or maybe Chad Dotson all of a sudden started tweeting, and it was like, "Oh my God, Joe Posnanski did this," and I was like sitting on the bus going, "Seriously?" It was just like completely out of left field, and so to speak. So, and then the next thing you know, Dave Schoenfeld picked it up at ESPN.com, and then Chad said, "Well, MLB Network wants to have you on the hot stove, their show in the morning in the off season." And I was completely agog. I mean, I'm just like, "Are you kidding me?" And it was really nice. It was my 15 minutes of fame. Andy Warhol's 15 minutes. That was mine. Really, really nice. And the guys couldn't have been nicer to me. And yeah, it was great. I mean, it was all based on the fact that Walt Jocketty had said something about he was going to disabuse Joey Votto of the notion that he needed to, walk too much. And I was like, "Are you kidding me? Really? What is wrong with the way Joey Votto approaches baseball? I mean, everything he's done has been not only good for the team, but good for himself and good for the game. And it just didn't make any sense." And so, it was an interesting point in time for me, and I'll always cherish it. It was nice. I was really happy. Maybe it'll happen again someday.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope so. It was that was really cool. It was really cool. I think I had just started writing for Red Leg Nation, so I was like, "Oh wow, I am writing for a big time organization here." Yeah, we got guys on the MLB Network. Is it crazy for you how the narrative has shifted on Votto? And I feel like we had Mo Ager on earlier this summer, and he talked about like this last year felt like the last holdouts for Votto just said, "Okay, whatever. He's great. He's incredible. We can't hate on this guy anymore." Is it wild how much that's shifted over the last 9 years or 10 years, 12 years, however long it's been?
Yeah, I think it kind of is. I mean, there will always be holdouts. And I think part of the problem is if you're on social media, you get the best of people, but you also get the worst of people. So there are always these people that just won't give in, that think that Votto is like, he's selfish and he's not, he doesn't understand the game, and he should be swinging at balls outside the strike zone. Why isn't he, There's always going to be that. It's never going to go away, but you're absolutely right. The landscape has shifted. And I think part of it has to do with Votto himself. He has come out and he always loved the fans. And I remember him talking to Lance McAllister. Lance McAllister did a series of videos because Votto reached out and said, "I want to talk to the fans." And so he did that, and they did this series of things. And he talked about how much the fans mean to him. And over the years, he's kept that up. And you can see him, the things that he does, the way he takes care of kids, the way he signs autographs. I remember that guy who gave him a hard time, and he kind of gave him a hard time back. And then afterwards he said, "I was wrong. It was terrible of me to do that. And I apologize." And it's like, who does that? Well, Joey Votto does that because that's the kind of guy he is. And I don't want to say he's the best of baseball. the funny thing about athletes is that we idolize them and then they disappoint us. And but he's one of those guys that I don't think is going to disappoint us. He's always going to be that guy who upholds the stuff that we believe in and play the game. Not only, not necessarily play the game the way we think it should be played, but play the game the way he thinks it should be played, which is giving everything he has and play intelligently and support his players and, support the fans. And I think the fans have finally understood, for the most part, that he loves them and they love him back. And that's rare these days. And it's as a fan, that's all you can ask. If the players appreciate the fans, I mean, there's nothing else you can ask for.
Yeah, very well said. Like what you said about how Votto's one of the rare athletes that hasn't disappointed us. That's well said. Carlos, do you feel this shift? I know we've kind of talked a little bit about this, but do you feel this shift over the last year and last couple years kind of building to where it's not as much? Because I don't know. I mean, back in 2013, 14, 15, I mean, man, my mentions were lined up every time Votto struck out with a runner on third base. It was insane. Do you feel like it shifted?
Well, yeah, it definitely shifted. I remember speaking about this and even on Twitter. I guess we could start at the beginning of his career. He's mentioned it before in articles and interviews that he didn't want to say much the first 3-5 years of his career because he felt that you had to earn to be able to talk in the locker room. You had to earn to be able to say stuff, crazy stuff in front of the camera. That was all stuff that was earned and not basically free game like it is now. Not saying that I don't like it, but just he was one of the last guys from that breed, from that era of ball where it was like respect was number one. Amongst your peers, amongst your teammates, you got to earn in everything that you get on and off the field. So then we go like to his MVP years, lots to love about him. The future's bright. It's going great. And, he still stays kind of below the radars as media comes. And that's the way he likes it. He doesn't want to be, the New York media, the big light like that. He feels at home in Cincinnati, and he's always felt that way. And then, those struggles start coming, but those struggles, whenever those struggles came and whenever your Twitter was getting lit up, there was a particular gentleman that was the voice of the Cincinnati Reds that was pretty hard on him pretty often. And, his son followed suit. So we've got a lot of those people that were like, yeah, maybe I felt a certain way about Joey, but now I definitely do because, it's these two guys are talking about him negatively all the time. And then over the last 2 years, what are the two ingredients that we have missing? I mean, those people are they don't have that gasoline being poured on them to light them up. They don't need that, and we've got a great broadcast team and radio team right now, and it's all fun and games right now.
Well, Carlos, you're getting really good at this podcasting thing, but you just gave me a perfect segue into our next segment. Literally, if you're watching the next slide, I wanted to ask Richard about not really go into too much detail about the article because we've exhausted that, and I'm past that. But Richard, you wrote a piece. Has anyone seen my old friend Martin talking about how the Reds play-by-play broadcaster, like most of our stories was our, idol or whatever adjective you want to use, growing up and following the Reds, but kind of grew a little sour towards the way he called the game and handled players like Votto. I wanted to ask you, as someone who wrote a piece, like this, which kind of really I felt was very well said for a lot of our feelings. How do you feel about the current team, the current broadcasting team with John Sadak and Barry Larkin and Chris Welsh and Tommy Thrall and Jeff Brantley? I mean, do you feel like the Reds are in a much different spot than they were like when you wrote this article? I think it was back in 2015.
Well, let me start off by saying that I miss Marty Brennaman. I mean, whatever issues I had with Marty as he grew older, you can't forget what a great voice he's always been. His play-by-play has always been, almost second to none. I mean, we talk about Vin Scully, but other than that, I don't know if anybody's been better than Marty. My problem with Marty was just, I love Joey Votto, I love Jay Bruce, and he was hard on both of them, and I couldn't understand why. I understand he didn't care for metrics. He didn't understand the way the game was going, and that disappointed me because Marty's a smart guy, and he could have found his way through that, and in my opinion, had a better end to his career than he did. But there's no escaping who Marty was. These new guys that come on, they have a tall task. I mean, replacing Marty Brennaman is not easy, at least from Tommy Thrall's point of view. But Tommy's very good, and he'll have to find his own way. He's going to find his own voice, and it's going to take a while. I'm sure it took Marty a while. I don't really remember back in 1974 how long it took Marty to be Marty, but I'm sure that in the beginning it was the same way. And Tommy is going to plow that same ground. And I don't worry about it. Tommy's good. I really like Tommy. I like the TV guys too, for the most part. I mean, Chris Welsh is wonderful. I love Chris Welsh. I could listen to him all day. He brings a lot to the broadcast, anyone he does. I haven't listened to Tommy a lot because up in New Jersey, I was watching the games on TV with my subscription to MLB Extra Innings. And so I wasn't listening to a lot of radio. But now that I'm down here, I will be. And but yeah, what little I've heard of him, I really like. The Reds are in good hands from that point of view, I think.
Yeah, I love Tommy Thrall. I love the way he calls the game. And the interesting, Tommy and Barry, I feel like are good examples for those of us. Neither one of those guys are very hard into the analytics. Sadek does a good job. Chris Welsh does a good job. Brantley, kind of more middle ground, I would say. But I don't think those of us who, maybe got a little critical towards the end, really, like we didn't have to have a sabermetric broadcast. It's great. I love it when it's brought up, but we don't have to have that. It's nice to have someone that you feel like is rooting for the Reds along with you. And for all of, Barry Larkin's flaws, and again, it was his first year, so I don't want to be too critical of him. I felt like every night I turned in, my favorite player as a kid is calling the game and rooting for the Reds. And I think that's really cool. And I think Sadek really helps him out a lot. I think Barry might not be as enjoyable with another partner, but Sadek is so well prepared every night that I think he kind of makes up for that. Carlos, you got anything to add on that?
My only Marty Brennaman story was one that almost happened but didn't quite happen. I went to go visit Joey. It was in Miami. It was the year that that pitcher died, so that's why I remember the year specifically, because it was one of his last outings. But anyway, we're in the team hotel, and I'm enjoying the Miami life. Joey had already gone to the field. It was like 1:00, and I'm out by the pool, and here comes favorite radio announcer. And this was like right in the midst of that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Carlos, are you going to go over there and ask him what you want to ask him? Or I thought twice. I was like, shit, if this gets back to Joey somehow, I'm going to be in so much shit. So I chickened out and just sunbathed and had a couple of adult beverages. But man, I had several questions
Oh boy, if I could only see that. All right, good stuff. Well, we're gonna talk about the baseball lockout, yuck, and we'll also kind of talk about the DH coming to the NL and what that means. But before we jump into all of that, I wanted to tell you about NordVPN. What's more important than peace of mind? Nothing. And that's what NordVPN is here for, to give you all the peace of mind while you are online. And with all the threats that you face today on the internet, it is more important than ever to be sure that you have the best VPN you can get. NordVPN is the world's best VPN service, offering the fastest connectivity, most servers, and next-gen encryption to make sure that everything you do online stays secure. Plus, you can use NordVPN on all your computers and devices, no matter the operating system. With NordVPN's unlimited bandwidth, you never have to worry about a slow connection either, and plans start at under $4 per month. So grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/believe or use the code BELIEVE. That is BLEAV to get your 70% off your NordVPN plan, plus one additional month for free. It's also risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guaranteed. All right, thanks to NordVPN for supporting Late Night Reds Talk Live. Let's dig into it. So the lockout is still going on. It's becoming more and more likely that the season is going to get delayed when Ken Rosenthal and Evan Drellick, hopefully I said his name right, when they start saying no reason to believe the season will start on time, that's when I start going, yep, it's really not looking good. The latest around, if you haven't been following, which honestly you're probably smarter than me for not following. I try to turn it off some days and just do anything else. Manfred came out and said some stuff at a press conference. Some of his announcements were draft lottery, universal DH, and eliminating the draft compensation pick. We'll talk about some of that stuff in a minute. They basically said that ahead of meeting with the players on Saturday. MLPA was unimpressed, to no one's surprise, by the negotiations. Another one of the interesting quirks was talking about maybe limiting the number of times a player can be optioned, maybe to 5, which that's kind of interesting. Barely raising the luxury tax threshold. Major League Baseball also saying, as part of the negotiation, which I don't even know exactly how that applies, that they might eliminate hundreds of minor league players' jobs. Carlos, let's start with you. You've been very, vocal in support of the Players Association and saying stay strong and all of these kind of things, which I think most normal human beings would side with you on that. Do you get the sense that the players might, start wavering here at some point? What would your thoughts be, if you were a player here on February 15th, as I believe today's the day pitchers and catchers are actually supposed to report?
I mean, it's all relative. I mean, it depends where you're at in your career. If you're a fringe player, if you're a 1-year player, you want to maximize the time that you're a big leaguer. But then at the same time, if you're maybe a Jonathan India, you probably are okay holding out a little bit, just because you're probably going to be in a better financial situation. You have, more than likely you're not going to be sitting down next year. You're not worried about that. But I mean, it's just, I don't even know where to start with this whole thing. It's so wild to me that they're so far off and the players aren't even really asking for anything all that much, anything crazy, outlandish. Like, I mean, I don't know where to start. I mean, it's just so bad right now that it doesn't make any sense. And it's so hard because so many players lost so much money the last couple of years, or 2020 was probably the worst. And I know those guys don't want to lose that. Some of them are losing, tens of millions of dollars, and that's a lot of money. Somebody, for example, like Joey. I mean, he's towards at the end of his career, and he's made a lot of money. Of course, everybody knows that. But these are big paychecks that he's given up here, and he's only going to have a couple more years of them, to set up, that family wealth. So it's crazy times.
Yeah, it just feels like there's so many different directions. It's not like it's only like, fighting over one or two things. There's like 15 different things from all different angles that you're trying to keep track of. I think Indy is a really good example of a player, and Indy also got a big signing bonus. So he's even a little bit different than, maybe someone like an Aristides Aquino, who's like kind of on a league minimum, where he's like, hey, I need this money. India kind of already has got some, you would think, some money like up in the bank. An interesting kind of player that I wanted to ask you, Carlos, about would be like a Jesse Winker or Luis Castillo. They're like a couple years away from their big payday, or at least they're expecting when they hit free agency. A player like those two guys, do you think that with them, they start going, man, like I'm so close to my payday, like I don't want to, have the, baseball get this, kind of have this really negative perception, and in 95, I mean, the playoff games had empty seats. Like it had a negative effect on that season. Like, do you think those guys are kind of like thinking about like, what's this going to do to baseball? Is this going to mess up my contract, that I'm supposed to be getting next year or the year after?
I don't think it's the point to that yet. I don't think it's gotten that far. But I think those guys are good examples of guys who were probably okay to wait, to hold on, to get as much as you can for us, because I don't know how much more Winker can do for himself. The best probably case scenario is if he just repeats what he did last year.
Stay healthy.
Yeah, and then stay healthy. And Luis, everybody already knows what he can do. Nobody cares. Whoever's trading for him or wants to trade for him cares what he did last year in April and May, because they know what he can do. So I don't think there's much more that he can do either. I don't think he's ever going to win a Cy Young, but I think he can, put enough good seasons together to where he could get that top dollar. But more than likely, I just don't see him being the type of player that's actually going to affect.
Richard, where are you kind of at with where everything stands here on February 15th?
Well, I moved down here and I'm ready to go to baseball games, and all of a sudden I'm not going to get to go to baseball games, it looks like, for a while. So that's disappointing. I'll tell you, nothing's going to happen until the last minute, because that's the way negotiations go. Everybody takes their own opinion and they back off into their corner. And until it gets to the last minute, that's when things get serious. So it doesn't surprise me that there's no movement. That doesn't mean there won't be. It just means that this is too early. There's nothing being lost right now. But when we get to the last minute and games start to get lost, then things will start to get serious, and we'll see who is willing to go to the mat to get what they want. And, are the owners going to say, look, we're willing to lose games because we want things the status quo, the way it is? Will the players say, will they stick together? I think the biggest thing is the players need to stand up for the guys that aren't making any money. What did the players ask for? $700,000 or $750,000? They should be asking for $800,000, $900,000. If you get to the major leagues, you should get buku bucks. And I'm not so worried about the guys that are making millions at the other end and how they do a salary cap. I'm worried about these guys that just got here. I'm also worried about minor league players. There's a wonderful article in The Athletic about minor league baseball and the way these guys are they can't survive. They get paid by baseball for 6 months a year, and for the other 8 months, or maybe it's 8 months and 6, but they struggle.
It's only 5 months.
Yeah, and And, you've got these guys that got roofing jobs. There's a guy talking about, I have to work a roofing job, the construction job. I'm worried about falling off a ladder and my career's over. And I can't make rent. I can't eat right. And nowadays with sabermetrics, the guys want to train better, and that's expensive, and they can't afford it. And it's stupid, because these Major League Baseball teams, they would benefit from making sure these guys are well fed and not eating at McDonald's, but instead they're not paying them. It wouldn't cost them anything. It's nothing. If you want to know anything about the owners, look at how they treat their minor league players. These guys are their future, and they pay them nothing. They pay them a pittance. And it's incredible. It's incredible what's going on. I had a discussion with Jason Linden over at Red Leg Nation a few years ago, and I didn't feel this way then. I was an actor, and I was an apprentice, and I worked at Actors Theater of Louisville, and I lived on Ann Page macaroni and cheese. And my attitude was, if that's the life you chose, then that's the life you chose. And Jason sort of, I don't know, he straightened me out. I listened to his argument and thought, you know what? He's right. He's absolutely right. And it's different than being an actor. It's like the arts are different. There isn't big money in the arts. Even the people that have money in the arts, it's a crapshoot. They spend a lot of money to bring shows to Broadway, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But Major League Baseball, they're awash in money. They got more than they know what to do with, and they can't give a few $1,000s to the guys that would make them better. There's guys washing out of the minor leagues because they can't afford to stay afloat. They just give up. A guy gets married and he's got a kid or two. He can't do it. And he could have been a Major League Baseball player, but he can't move forward. He can't do it because he can't afford it. He can't work. He can't stay in shape, because he can't do it. And it's terrible, and it's short-sighted, and Major League Baseball is cutting off their nose to spite their face when they do this. But boy, it's the worst of penny pinching. But that's their mentality. And so when you think that they'll do that to the minor leaguers, then you look forward to what they're doing to the Players Association on the other end. It's easy to look at the rich players and say, well, they're greedy and they want this. But I think many people are missing the big picture there. I don't know, just my opinion.
Yeah, well said. And I think I'd add to that. I feel like the Players Association should be doing a better job highlighting what you just said, as opposed to, like, I saw Max Scherzer with a statement, and nothing against Max Scherzer. He earned all that money. Go for it, man. You get that contract. But I see him tweeting, like, why is he the guy tweeting? I feel like that they should have a better strategy here. Max, we love you. You just be quiet. You sit this one out, because no one is going to sympathize with you. You earn that money, great. We're all thrilled for you. But let's hear some of these more, stories like you're talking about, and have that be our focus, because I think you could get, more of the casual fans, behind this. The one thing that I would add to all this, man, it stinks that the last 3 years, 2020, last year we started without fans or limited, whatever. And now we're in this in 20, it's like 3 straight years of this. It's just like, man, as a baseball fan, how much more of a beating can you take? But I would, Richard, I think you were kind of alluding to this. I would try to take a step back. At this point, it really hasn't done that much damage to baseball. Only thing it's really ticked off is the diehard fans like us. But we're not going anywhere. We can threaten, oh, I'm not going to watch you. You'll be here. You'll be there on opening day. You'll be watching. You'll be glued in. It's the casual baseball fans. I don't think we realize how many casual baseball fans have no idea that the season opening on time is in jeopardy. I was asked a couple weeks ago to write an article for something about opening day. And the person that asked me is a baseball fan, goes to games, and but they're like, "Can you write something about the team for opening day?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." They want it like 3 weeks in advance. I was like, "But the season might not be starting on time." They're like, "Wait, what?" They had no idea. So I don't think we realize how many of those people are out there. But yeah, I mean, if just opening day in Cincinnati, if that gets canceled after the last 2 years or if it's postponed, man, it's gonna take some getting those people back, because they're gonna say, "Oh, now let me know when baseball starts. If I'm interested, I'll do it." But the longer you get into the summer, especially in Cincinnati, the more you start getting closer to football season. I mean, it's really a bad cycle. So I don't think now there's a lot of damage, but season gets delayed. That's yeah. Anything
Yeah,
else?
we're not very far from that, because if this takes longer than a week and a half, then they're going to miss games, because it's going to take pitchers a minimum of 4 weeks to get ready, and that's pushing it.
Yeah, and I just hope we don't get this last minute thing like Richard had said, and
Yeah.
we have a bunch of injuries. That would just
Exactly.
that would be miserable. All right, let's move on to something like kind of, I guess, a little more interesting. So it sounds like the DH is officially coming to the National League. Let's start off with our opinions on the DH going to the National League. I'll start. I'm someone who, for years, never wanted the DH, and I grew up watching National League baseball. It's what I know. I always loved that there was two leagues with two different rules. I know people hate that. I loved it. I thought it was kind of a fun quirk that made baseball different than other sports. So I'm sad that it's that part of it's over, but I had also kind of conceded that it was over for like 3 years. So at this point, it is what it is. And then with seeing how adamant pitchers are against it and seeing some of these injuries, that also kind of like, I'm kind of like whatever at this point. Rich, let's start with you. What is your thoughts on the DH coming to the National League?
I hate it. I absolutely hate it. And that's because I'm old and I'm shaking my fist at the clouds. And I understand that. I understand that few people feel the way I do. I think there's a lot. I mean, I keep seeing the arguments about how, pitchers, they don't hit, they terrible batting average and everything. But, most teams don't have good hitters anywhere at the bottom of the lineup. So it's not going to get that much better. And I also think if you want to make the game more offensively palatable, there's other ways to do that. I mean, we've got other problems with the offense. There's the ball. They could move the mound back 6 inches and see what that does. They could change the strike zone, and they could do all kinds of things to improve the offense of the game that would, in my opinion, would do a lot for offense. Because I'm in agreement, we need more offense, but I don't know that we need to. I don't know. I always liked, just as you were saying, Nick, I always liked that there was two differences in the leagues. I thought that was kind of interesting. Some people see it as a flaw in the game, but I didn't. And I always liked the strategy that imposed upon the game. And that will be gone. And the game will become a little more, I don't know, boring because of it. But I know I'm in a minority. I know people are going to shout me down, but it won't be the first time.
We'll get them, Richard. We'll get them.
One more point before we get to Carlos, kind of adding on what Richard said is, I don't necessarily think that the offense that the DH is going to create is the offense that a lot of people want, because the DH is just going to be one of these more, home run heavy, high strikeout, high walk guys. You're not gonna be it's not Billy Hatcher up there, or, Ichiro slapping the ball. That's not your designated hitter. It's going to be the guys that a lot of people don't like about the game. So it's not I don't think it's going to provide the offense that a lot of people, I guess, are craving right now. Carlos, what's your thoughts?
I'm all over the place with it. Like personally, I like it because it might extend, a buddy of mine's career by a year or two, maybe. Get to selfishly watch him a little more. It creates another job and probably a well-paying job. But then again, I'm gonna miss the manager strategy. Like I like a good old double switch in the bottom of the fifth now. It used to be like the seventh or eighth, but now it's like in the fifth inning. That was fun to me. It's not just writing out a lineup. It's not little league. There's strategy in it. One of my favorite things ever to see on a baseball field was Johnny Cueto not run out a ground ball. Like him to take 3 strong steps and just shut it on down. Won't be able to see great things like that. I don't know. I'm kind of indifferent on it, I guess. It is what it is. Stuff changes all the time, so maybe they'll change it back later.
Yeah.
And it's also going to affect records too, which is kind of like, that's going to affect starting pitchers' numbers for sure.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. Joey Heeb asked a couple questions. Thanks, Joey, so much for watching. Kind of really followed what we're going to talk about tonight, but kind of asked about what our lineup will look like. Richard, let's start with you. First off, do you think this is a good thing for the Reds, and B, kind of how do you think they'll use the DH in 2022?
Yeah, it probably is a good thing for the Reds because Tyler Stevenson can catch for 130 games, and then he can scoot over to first base, and they'll have another big hitter in the lineup. And depending on your lefty-righty matchups, you'll be able to play other people there. And Joey will need time off. He's not a spring chicken anymore. He may want to play 162 games, and maybe he can. But if he can't or doesn't want to and needs the rest, that's going to be a great way for them to do that. They've got problems right now because they have log jams at positions. There's too many third basemen, so that this could ease that to some degree for certain games. I personally would like to see Nick Senzel move to second base, and I'd like to see Jonathan India move to third base. But then what do you do with our current third baseman, Mr. Suarez? And he could possibly, play some games at first base. So yeah, and you got Aquino. He could get in there and play first base. Yeah. So yeah, I think it'll be good for the Reds. I'm in the short run. Yeah. Because they have some holes and they've got some log jams at certain positions. And so this would help them move things around a little bit, at least in the short term.
One quick point before we get to Carlos. If you're watching, this is the projected lineup. I did not make this. This is from Fangraphs.com. So Jose Barrero not being in there is not my doing. Please take it out with Fangraphs. Carlos, what is your thoughts on, is this a good thing for the Reds, and how do you think they should use the DH?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. It's a good thing for this current Reds roster, the way it's out there. And yeah, if everybody's healthy, ready to go, I think Moustakas is DHing, probably 3 times a week. Joey maybe once a week. At the beginning, see how he feels halfway going through the season, whether it needs to be a couple more or not. But then that's banging on also having, Gino back to Gino. these log jams that Richard's talking about, I kind of like the fact that they have them because, one, we always talk about you can't have too many good players. You can't have too many good starting pitching, But then if nobody rises out of this, say at our third base log jam, if Gino doesn't rise out of this and take that position, if Mike doesn't rise out of this and take that position, then the Reds are kind of screwed anyway. If it's just going to be a battle for crappy third baseman and DH, then they're screwed. It doesn't matter. So this log jam, these are the cream of the crop. These are the best baseball players in the world. And if you can't go into camp or go into the season knowing you got to fight for your job and you can't come out on top, then it's not going to be a good thing for the Reds this year. And I feel that way about center field because I feel, in a healthy, there's going to be a Senzel and, a Naquin that's going to have to bat against right-handed pitching. There's no doubt about it. And where are you going to put him though? It's a good thing. The competition there, somebody's got to come out on top. I keep saying it over and over, but I feel somebody will at each position, and it's going to be a positive thing for the Reds.
Yeah, and somebody's going to get hurt. So
yeah, sure, yeah.
I just hate to say it, but
yeah, someone always gets hurt. Yeah, I think I'm mostly with you. I think everyone healthy, which is a big assumption, especially with the current group the Reds have. I think they would just rotate Suarez, Moustakas, Votto, and Stevenson as the DH. And then, Moustakas can play first base. If Votto's DHing, obviously Suarez and Moustakas can both play third base. And then I guess one of them's the odd man out if Stevenson's DHing, but I think they're going to need days off. I think you have one injury to any of those three guys, Suarez and Moustakas or Votto. Any of those guys get hurt for any lengthy period of time, I think you make Jesse Winker your DH. He's the best fit for the Reds as DH. He's not a good defensive player in left field. Cost the Reds. I know he tries. You can tell his effort's there. It's not an effort thing. He's just not a good defensive player. But he is an elite hitter against right-handed pitching. And you saw in September how bad the Reds were without Jesse Winker in the lineup. And Winker has yet to play a full season. And I think DHing him helps preserve him. So, right now you can't DH him because you have all these other guys that you are paying a lot of money and, you got to find a way to get them in there. If any of those three guys get hurt, I'm DHing Winker absolutely as much as I can. And, if I'm just improving my defense out in left field, but I'm also preserving the health of Winker, I think that's a huge advantage for the Reds. Yeah, thanks, Joey, for agreeing with me. Nice to have some agreeing. And thanks, Joey, for interacting with us. We do really appreciate that tonight.
Are you tweeting? Are you over there sending messages as Joey?
Yeah, Joey. That's my my surname. Yeah. I'm not talented enough to run the slides and be tweeting. I can't do that. Maybe when Tim's hosting, I can do that. Tim's out talking to Penny Hardaway or something tonight. I don't know. I guess we're not as good as Penny Hardaway, but it is what it is. Any other thoughts on kind of the DH situation, kind of where we land with that, fellas? We beat that down. Let's talk about the other two things that I saw. First, the draft lottery. Real quick, Richard, do you like that?
Yeah, it's fine. I have no real thoughts about it. It's fine.
Carlos, what do you think about the draft lottery? I think they said 1 through 8 would be the.
Yeah, it's whatever.
Yeah,
when was the last time that we got excited for a draft pick? Was it Bryce Harper?
I was pretty excited about Hunter Green. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated.
True. Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's good. I don't know if it's really going to incentivize tanking too much, because is there really that big of a gap between a lot of the players 1 through 8? Some years maybe, a lot of other years no. But I think it's good to, you're not. I've seen people say, well, it should just be all 30 teams and it's randomized. Come on, that's ridiculous. Like, there's got to be a competitive balance to this thing. There's got to be a way to do both, to try to disincentivize tanking with still having a competitive balance. And then that does kind of lead me to the other one, the elimination of the draft pick compensation. Now, I have yet to see a concrete answer on this. If Castellanos does sign somewhere else, would the Reds lose that pick? I don't know the answer to that. I wouldn't think so, because like this would be after like they had already offered the qualifying offer. I don't know how that could be like retroactively taken away, but I mean, in general, I guess I understand it, but I definitely, I'm kind of torn on a lot of these things where, I do side with the players on most of this, and I do want teams to spend more, but I also want the game to be competitive. And so it's kind of a weird, spot that I'm in. And people will just go, well, the Reds should just spend more. Okay, well, if the Reds spend more, the Cardinals are going to spend more and the Cubs are going to spend more. Like, it's not just the Reds just aren't magically going to catch up to everyone else. There's different revenues coming in. So the Reds money, however much it is that they could spend, it's going to run out before whatever the Cubs and Cardinals are. So there still has to be that competitive component. And I feel like sometimes we go a little too far in the direction where we sometimes miss that. What's your guys' thoughts on that? Richard, we'll start with you.
Yeah, we've sort of drifted into this area where the owners have so much money, so there are no small market teams anymore. And okay, fine. If that's how you want to phrase it, fine. But there are smaller market teams. There is a difference. It's not a binary choice anymore. There are gradations to this. I always think about it. Refresh my memory because I'm getting old. Who is the big Yankee number one pitcher that the Yankees signed a couple of years ago for $300 million?
Garrett Cole.
Yeah, all right, Garrett Cole. So you think about Garrett Cole. If the Reds had signed Garrett Cole, and well, let's say the Yankees signed him. So let's go with the Yankees first. The Yankees signed Garrett Cole. If Garrett Cole pulled a Wayne Simpson, for those of you who don't know who Wayne Simpson is, he pitched for the Reds in 1970, and at the end of the year, his arm fell off. He was throwing a baseball in a game, and his shoulder just collapsed. And that was basically the end of Wayne Simpson's career. And he was 14-3, and he was the best pitcher the Reds had that year. And his arm just collapsed. Now, if Garrett Cole's arm collapsed in the middle of his contract, at the beginning of his contract, would it hurt the Yankees? It sure would. But guess what? The Yankees would walk on. If did the Reds have the money to sign Garrett Cole? Sure they did. They're worth a lot of money and they could afford it. But what would happen to the Reds if they signed him and his arm collapsed? Would the Reds walk on? No, they wouldn't. They would be hamstrung for years. They'd be decimated. And that's the difference between these smaller market teams and these teams at the other end, is there's these huge free agents that only a handful of teams can afford to take a risk on. And they do it because they can survive. And there are other teams that they can't do it. I mean, they could, but they can't really take the risk. And so that's my problem with all this, is that it's not a level playing field. And to suggest that it is because Bob Castellini can sell the team because Forbes says it's worth $1.3 billion kind of misses the point for me. I'm not I'm not carrying water for Bob Castellini. As far as I'm concerned, he should have spent money to fix that relief staff, and he didn't do it, and that's on him. And I'm worried that he's backpedaling now, and that concerns me a great deal. But let's not ask like the Reds the Reds organization can spend the money that the Dodgers can or Yankees can, because they can't.
Carlos, what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, I agree with Richard. I mean, there's levels to this. It's not, This isn't monopoly money. You know, the Reds can only afford so much. I mean, that was a perfect example with Garrett Cole. I never really thought of it that way, but it makes perfect sense. Like that would have crushed them. They would have crushed the Reds if Joey's contract, he didn't fulfill that. The last several years that would crush him if they released him. I mean, they're still on the books for that $25 million for the next 2 years. But yeah, I agree with Richard on that.
Yeah, I just don't think we have to go all one way or the other, and try to have some like normal conversations. One interesting thing that I found, there's this guy's NBA. He is a Cardinals fan, so but he did this really cool thing where he analyzed the financial data for every team, and the conclusion that he came to was that the Yankees spend the fewest amount of their revenue on their players, which is fascinating. It's so I feel like sometimes like the big market teams, they get a pass. Like they get, oh, you go to the luxury tax, oh, you're good. You did everything you could do. When that's just like not even like they make 5 times what the Reds or Pirates or whoever else is making. So I thought there's got to be a balance in there. We did get one more question. We'll probably close out with this from our guy Joey. You guys saw me; I wasn't typing, so Joey, this is legit. Joey asks, "Are we looking at Nick Lodolo and Hunter Green to be added to the starting rotation or be bullpen pieces? I can't think, but if our pitching and defense isn't better, our offense can't save us." I'll start. I mean, I would assume probably one of those guys is in the opening day rotation. One of those guys is in AAA. I mean, this is assuming most health. That's probably the most likely scenario, at least for me. Richard, what do you think?
Well, assuming we have a decent spring training, that'll probably decide. Those guys will come in and somebody will pitch well and earn a spot, or they won't. So we have no Wade Miley, so we got a spot in the rotation for somebody. And of course, injuries will probably happen as well, and that's going to determine it. It's not. I can see where they'd want to start Hunter Green off in the bullpen and let him get his sea legs before throwing him in there in the starting rotation. I think it also depends on how they feel about his development since he had Tommy John surgery, where they think he's at. Can he handle a full load? Is he ready? Lodolo, it's a different story. He's a different type of pitcher. He might be more likely to jump into the starting rotation, assuming that he has a good spring.
Carlos, what's your thoughts?
I think if we have to rush the spring by any amount of time, there's no chance, whether it's the bullpen or starting rotations. That's just my opinion, because just going off the way the Reds have been for the last 15 years, they don't rush anybody to the big leagues. And if there's any reason they can keep them down a little bit longer just to make sure that they're healthy and safe. And, we're not going to rush you. We can bring you up maybe the second week of the year or whatever, but you guys are going to get your full spring training time because they've invested so much money in these guys. They just came back from injury. There's really no reason to throw them out there in April if we're going to have to rush this deal. And I agree with it. So, but if they do say start in 2 weeks, then I think, I guess I would give the nod to Hunter Green just because he did throw more innings last year. He was a little bit healthier than Lodolo. Maybe they want to see where he's at after maybe about a full month of actual pitching, but we'll see.
Very good. Well, Richard, thank you so much for coming on. It was such a blast to have you. Hopefully we have an actual season here at some point, and I'd love to have you back on again during the season and talk about like real baseball happening. Shout out where people can find you on social media, anything you're working on, maybe writing towards the season and when it begins.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Richard Fitch, NYC, even though I'm not in NYC anymore. And writing for Red Leg Nation. I'm I'm trying to write more regularly now, so I'm going to start to try to do a regular piece that's called Notes from the Machine Room, and that's going to be a regular thing this year. So I'm very much a slow writer, so I'm trying to pick up the pace and write a little more frequently. So keep my fingers crossed that I can actually do this.
Very good.
And thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It was really nice of you, Nick, and nice to meet you, Carlos.
You too. I appreciate it very much. Appreciate the insight and the perspective, and I feel like we agree a lot, Richard. You're all right, buddy.
Okay. Well, I don't know if you want to go there yet. But.
That's high praise. There's few people Carlos agrees with. I'm not even in that boat, so
Not even close.
That's good. Well, thanks everyone as always for checking us out. Late Night Reds Talk Live. We'll be back to our normal time next Monday. Took yesterday off for the Valentine's Day, trying to be mediocre husbands for a week. But we'll be back next Monday. If you haven't subscribed, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, make sure you do that. Give us 5 stars. We really do appreciate it. And as always, we are sponsored by our friends at Bet Online. Everyone, have a great week. Go Reds.